Hey guys, microphone was a little bit far. Hey guys, welcome to this phase 2 of the 1 week portrait challenge live Paintover and Q&A session. I'm super happy, super pumped to be here. This is one of the days that I super like because you guys push your illustration and I get the fun work to actually work on something that it's quite pushed. And it's super fun for me. I want to say hi to everybody on the chat already. I'm seeing Rashmi, Laken, Rachel, Secret Elf. Hi guys, and thank you so much for being live with me. In just a few minutes I'm going to start. This is the second one. On Tuesday we were doing sketching. Today, Thursday, we will do rendering. And then Saturday I'll be doing detail. And on Sunday, let me talk to you about Sunday a little bit. We're going to have a workshop, you and I. All week long, we'll have work on our momentum, doing some exercises. We have the entire momentum of the community all together, painting towards portraiture. And usually what happens after the challenge is people go back to their routine, their habits, and sometimes you just lost that momentum. Well, on Sunday, I created a brand new workshop that I want to teach you guys. It's basically the tips that I use to create my own schedule and how to create my own momentum, and basically how I stay on track as both a hobbyist and a professional artist. So I want to teach you all of that, guys, and I'm super excited about it. Hi to everybody that's joining right now. Super happy you guys are here. We have a lot to cover today, so let me just jump in because, yeah. First of all, I'm excited. Oh yeah, I want to talk. So this is the workshop. So like I was saying, there is a link in the description of this video. If you don't want to miss this, the workshop on Sunday has nothing to do with portraiture, but you will learn some of my best tips on how to progress faster, how to keep painting on a weekly, monthly, even daily basis, and how you can do it with just a few minutes a day, really. The misconception of having to spend like an hour plus to see progress, that's not true. I'm going to show you why and how you can make it happen on Sunday. So be sure to be there. There's a link in the description. You can click on it, and I'll see you there. And with that being said, I'm sure you guys would like to see some paintovers. And I have some amazing work that I took. There were so many great pieces for me to choose from, guys. Also, I'll have a Q&A afterwards, so if you have questions, don't hesitate. You can put a capital Q always in front of your comment, of your questions. It's going to be easier for me to see them. I'll put the microphone just a little bit further away so I can see my stuff. And you guys let me know if you can still hear me correctly. Let's jump right in. All right. So we have the work of BU. BU, thank you so much for sharing your work in the community. You did an amazing job. And so today I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about subsurface scattering, I want to talk about value, and I want to talk about edges, soft and hard, where to place those edges, because it's really at this point in the rendering place that we kind of lose track sometimes. So I want to show you a few examples on this. The first one I want to show you here with the work of BU, it's subsurface scattering. So I think your proportions are good. Are real good. I think the skin tone looks good. The portrait looks good. It's just missing a touch of subsurface scattering. And sometimes it's just a question of knowing what you're supposed to add. So subsurface scattering is basically light that penetrates the skin. I want to make sure I'm sharing the screen here. Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. It's light that penetrates the skin. And so what happened is basically it goes inside the skin, and any kind of skin really, what it does, it kind of goes and inside the skin, and it's going to reflect from inside the skin. And usually what you have is capillaries, small veins. So there's always a orange glow that comes. And we totally have that on this portrait. Like if you're looking here, for example, we have that orange glow. We have it here. We have it here. And so sometimes just without even having to look at the reference, you will always see the subsurface scattering where there is a change between light and shadow. So basically on the edges of these lights. So what I can take is I can take a saffron brush and simply take orange like this, and I can paint just a little bit where we have that transition. So I'm going to put a little bit here. I'm seeing a little bit on the nose. Let me zoom out a little bit. I'm seeing a little bit here. I'm seeing also a little bit here. Maybe there's a tiny bit here. And so on and so forth. Split a bit more, and that's it. Just that touch for me is adding already a lot of life, maybe around the eyes, just a little bit. It's going to add that touch of light. So that's one thing here that was missing. I think for the rest, you did already a really good job. So you really just a little bit of that to add these different colors that will add just a lot of life to your portrait. So yeah. I want to say hi to everybody that's joining. Uno, Krisha, Chris, Jazz. Thanks for being there, guys. If you have any question, again, capital Q and shove your question in there. I'll be answering all of them. So that's for this. Thank you so much, BU, for sharing your work. I wanted to show that to everybody. So if you feel like you're missing some colors in your skin, it's probably that. Just add the subsurface scattering where there is a shift of light and color. Next, let's put that to mute. Next, we have the work of Dawn Tonic. Dawn, you did a great job here in terms of proportion. I also really like, you have a lot of different values, different tones. But one thing that I think is missing, especially when I look at your reference, is well, the saturation has been blown out. Now, this could be simply because you wanted to have more saturation, and I encourage that myself. I think in your case, you just went just too far. I'm going to try to just bring it back a little bit, and I want to point out a few places. If you're looking at your reference here, let me just have a top layer. If you're looking at your reference here, looking at the eyes, can't you see that there's some redness into it? And because you have so much redness kind of everywhere on your portrait, it doesn't feel like the eyes are red anymore. It just feels like they're normal. So we want to make sure that there's that redness. I think it's important for this portrait. So how am I going to fix this? There's always a million ways to just do something in Photoshop or any software, really. I think the first thing I would probably do with this one is just to take the illustration itself or the portrait itself, and I'm going to make a selection, and I'm going to desaturate the skin. Let me just do a quick selection. It doesn't have to be perfect, but something close enough. I'm going to take this and I'm going to use a adjustment layer. I'm going to use hue and saturation, I think. And whoops, I'll move that here. I'll desaturate kind of everything. And what you'll see now is like the values are not working. And that's going to be the same, the next thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to desaturate things a little bit. And then I'm going to create a new layer on top of everything. I'm probably going to make another selection. I'm going to select only the shadows. So make a selection here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm just looking at more or less where are these shadows. That goes kind of here and then here, and then you have kind of the entire head and even this here kind of, and yeah, it's about that. I think I could probably, could probably include just the eyebrow here. Something like that, I think, for now. And we'll take a saffron brush on this. And oh shit. Sometimes my computer doesn't like lives. Hopefully it's going to be fine. And I'm going to take just a darker, kind of saturated Ooh. There's a lot of like tonight, guys. Hopefully it's going to last. Yesterday I had, Tuesday I had no problem, but this is so slow. I'm wondering why. Yeah, technology. All right, cool. Let's continue for now. I'm just going to try to put just a little bit more saturation in the shadow. Just a little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to just kind of delete whatever we have here. And whoops. And whatever we have kind of here, but not completely. I'm actually going to use saffron brush eraser and just kind of delete a little bit there. Deselect. So right now what we have is we kind of fix the values and add a little bit more shadow. Now it's time to add that subsurface scattering, those red tones on top of that. I'm going to create a new layer here, and I'm going to put this one to multiply. And what I want to do is to use something red and kind of add just that redness on the eyes, just a little bit. That's a little bit better. I'll be able to add afterwards the highlights and zooming in, zooming out, trying to see what I'm doing. That's not so bad. It's missing a few values, but I'm going to fix that in a second. Right now I'm just seeing, do I have all the colors needed so I can continue? And I think I do. So I'm going to create a new layer. And at this point, it's a question of values. So we want to bring the contrast where they're needed. There's in the corner of the eye, right here, there's a lot more like darker value. So it's going to be important to kind of paint that. I'm going to just kind of paint it. There's a little bit more here as well. And kind of a little bit more here as well. So let's just add there. And we'll add the contrast afterwards. The lips needs, they're kind of in the purple tones. Even more purple than that. Let's just add the darker parts here, and then we're going to go towards more saturated. They're very much like, if you're looking at the picture, the lips are almost like the points of interest. That's where they has like the most contrast. It's supposed to be more purple though. I think I have the wrong color, but it's gonna be fine for now. Adding those values, and then it's a question of kind of looking a little bit everywhere. So far what we have, we just select all of this, put that in a group. We went from there to there. So the values are getting a little bit more there. Now there's obviously like a lot of work that needs to be done. Some of them has to do with the, let me move this here, with the edges. Now we have to kind of smooth certain edges, especially the one on the nose. The one on the cheekbone as well needs to be softened a little. Even that here, it's kind of just a bit too much. I'll soften that up here. And from there, it's just a lot of kind of observation. I'm seeing like some yellow tones here. Like one thing that I think there's not a lot of classes on is observation classes, really. Because if you're able to observe and see the different tones, the different values on your portrait, ultimately you'll be able to paint them. Just adding a little bit more. I don't want to add too much details because that's not the point of this presentation, but just I want to show you tricks to kind of start being able to fix the things that you see when you see that. Where am I? Oh, there we go. When you see that you went like too far in one direction, you can definitely like fix these things. I think in this case what we need is just we need a lot more saturation on the eyes a little bit, and then these bright highlights on the eyes. You don't need much more to just kind of understand a little bit more where we were going with this. I'm just going to soften up that shadow. Oof. Computer doesn't like to play with the smudge tool tonight. And I guess the one thing I could just add so you guys have like a clearer even understanding of that is just the occlusion shadows. Occlusion shadows are super important. They will really kind of bring the depth of your painting. Like if you were to just paint something very soft with almost like no shadows, but you put the occlusion shadows at the right places, automatically it's going to add quite a bit of depth to your painting. Like in this case, I'm just going to try to add around the eyes. They are very dark, so let's try to just kind of add that. And I know we didn't go into details, so I'm not going to go into details. I'm just going to add just enough contrast, really. Just masses of, see, that's supposed to be darker. And so that's the direction that I would go. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me just put everything that I did together. We went from there to there. And so the idea is to continue the direction, adding more subsurface scattering and, adding more subsurface scattering and just making sure that you don't lose these values that need to be ultimately just a little bit darker than the original here. All right, let me see if you guys have questions. Let me see if you guys have questions. I'm seeing a few questions before I go to another one. I'm seeing Solgas Art says, when we use mixer brush for blending, which setting do you recommend to use? There are options, dry, wet, moist, and so on. Find the optimal. When you download the one from Photoshop, you don't have to play with the settings. Simply install it as a tool preset. Because I created the brush, so you have the same settings. I can show them to you on screen, so you can see them. I have, okay, that's it. So 80% wet. Load of 75, the mix at 90, flow 100%, the rest is at 0. And I have this icon here, which is clean the brush after each stroke. I'm really using it as a mixer brush, but you can use the same thing with a smudge tool. And that's why I was saying in the course, if you're not using Photoshop, you can take the brush tip, put it into your software, use it as a smudge tool. It should do a more or less same kind of job. So that's how I do it. Reza says, do you add subsurface scattering before or after painting shadow and highlights? Does the order matter? Felt like I was on my way when shading. It matters, yes. I think personally I would add the shadows first, the highlights, or the light, not necessarily the highlights, but the shadows, the light, and then I would add a little bit more of subsurface scattering. But once you understand the principle of shadow, light, highlights, subsurface scattering, you can really just go with the flow. I think starting with the shadow helps because it's going to help you to bring the 3D form of your subject with much more ease. And after that, you can add like kind of details. And subsurface scattering is, to me, considered like a detail. It's a coloring detail. So that's how I would do it. But so yeah, hopefully that answered your question. Let me see. There's another question before I continue with the other example that I have for you guys. Manish says Monesh. So that's how it's pronounced. Monesh. I'm getting problem create render nose, especially when model looking upward. That's a question of perspective. If you have trouble with specific angles, two things you can do. First of all, what you can do is just learn a little bit more about perspective. Really, that's all there is. It's something that, I know it sounds boring sometimes, but doing cubes is really helpful. Now, if you don't want to do cube, and I don't blame you, you can do a nose. Let me just show on screen how I would like tackle that exercise. I'm actually going to give you exercise example on Sunday if you want to be there, and I'll talk about how you can learn perspective and all of these things with the prompt challenge that we have in the DPA. So be sure to be there. But if I were to just make a sketch here on top, you want to imagine that your nose is kind of like a pyramid on top of a pyramid, right? And so you want to move this kind of into perspective, and then imagine, all right, so maybe if I'm seeing it from the position from the bottom, then I would have maybe something like this, right? Where this is foreshortened, and then I see the base of the nose, right? I have my nostril here, where here I have my nostrils here. Understanding just the basic things like this will help you tremendously. So yeah, that's my my 2 cents about it. Let's move on to another one. What do I have prepared for you guys? Here I have the work of Simon W. Music. Simon, you did a great job when it comes to terms of proportions. I think also your skin tones is pretty close. You get some great proportion and everything, but it's very flat. There's no form to it. So when you started rendering, you lost all the form. Also, your values are just too pale. Your eyes are white. So let's try to fix that. So when you have a problem like this, you want to focus on shapes with hard edges, probably. But I'll show you like how I fix it step by step. But sharp with hard edges, because you want to bring back the nose. You want to bring back the cheekbones. You want to bring back the eyes. And then you want also, at the same time, work on the values. So let me show you a little bit of this. I'm going to first make a selection of your face and ultimately the entire kind of shadow. Kind of take the lip here in the middle of the lip. And then the nose. Just that kind of the bump here. Kind of looks like that. There's a bit of a patch kind of here, and even kind of a patch there. Let's start with that. I'm on a new layer. I'm going to take a brush. I'm going to take a soft round brush to add that shadow. Now, the shadow, what happens with the shadow when it comes to light, especially in a studio like this one, most of the time the bounce light will come from the ambient color of the environment. In this case, it's like that greenish background. So I could actually take this probably, and it would be a safe bet. Maybe add a little bit more saturation and try to just kind of add that. I think that's not dark enough. Let's see how that looks. That's a bit better, I guess. All right, so that's about what we're looking for. Let's deselect that. So that's already a little bit more dark, which is good. Let's create a new layer on top of this. So we need to bring back the structure of things. So I'm going to take a hard edge brush. And what I want to do is focus on the shapes and the volume. So if you have, I think I have that already somewhere here. Yeah. Let me bring this somewhere. here. If you have the as arrowhead, this is going to help you tremendously. I need a better word than tremendously. It's going to help you a lot to bring back these shapes that are super important. Let me just take kind of all of this plus this and just bring it lower a little bit so I can bring that none on it. So you want to think about simplifying like the forms, but also your portrait has a lot of values. They are showing you what forms you have in there. So let me get on my layer. So I'm going to start with the nose and around the nose. So there is light bouncing back. There's probably like they have like a reflector on that shot. And that reflector is bouncing some light back, and it's going to bounce back on the bridge of the nose right here. It's also going to bounce back on the corner of the eye and on the face here. This is going to help you to build that 3D, okay? So we can see that here, the nose here has a different color. There's the side, that's a bounce light that goes on the side. There's that part here, all of these parts. We kind of have to bring that back now. But you also have the very deep black around the eyes. I think I'm actually going to start with this. I'm going to take just the black of the eye, of the hair here, and I'm going to kind of just paint here that, even the eye, I feel the eye, the entire eye, it's got to be just darker really. And we'll do this. I'm just going to try to add that volume here. I think all of this is going to get darker. And I feel like just this portion here, it actually needs to be darker completely. Let's see if I can just take that value here and kind of bring back some darkness. All of this needs to be darker. There's this corner here. There's a patch here that needs to be darker. And that's for the darkest part. I feel like it's a bit of dark here. You know, sometimes you just have to kind of observe really what you're seeing. And it doesn't have to be pretty because you'll be able to render it afterwards. I think people panic when they're like, oh no, it looks ugly. You're like, yeah, it looks ugly. Just trust the process a little and we'll get there. Right now I'm just like, all right, I need these values to be darker. It's not even dark enough right now, but I think I can manage with what I have right now. I feel like the entire eye needs to be darker. Whoopsie. Okay, no, that's good. Inside the eye here, well, not that much, but that needs to be darker. Inside the eye, whoops. Needs to be kind of a bigger. Maybe that corner here. That's going there. There's going to be some subsurface scattering that needs to be on the nose here, but I'm just going to kind of try to bring back some of the volume. I don't want to have too much contrast, just enough. Just enough. And there's a lot of observation that needs to happen here. Just looking at what you're doing slowly. I feel like there's like a red tone coming here, so I'm really going to come here and try to see if I can have a reddish, maybe not that much, but just a little bit. Adding that's going to add some stuff. Here we have orange in the skin, and that's because there's bounce light coming from the shoulder that literally comes from here and bounce back on the face. So I could actually, I'm going to use maybe a saffron brush. I'm going to see if I can bring back my selection. Okay, no. That's not working. So I guess I'm just going to create a new layer and kind of bring back some orange on the face, just a little bit here. And then I'll just use my eraser to erase what's not supposed to be there. Going back with a hard edge brush. Zoom in, zoom out. I think we're going in the right direction. The ear has all these subsurface scattering of dark reds. Let's add some there. Some there. Kind of a dark patch here. I think the entire ear needs to be also kind of just darker maybe. Just a little bit. That's better. There is that gray that needs to appear a little bit somewhere. I'm just going to push that shadow a little bit further. And I'll fix the mouth later. I'm going to fix the mouth now. The mouth needs to be more saturated. And let's go pick that color. You know. It's a question of values, really. Just observing the values. Okay, before I continue, I'm seeing the chat going on. Let me see if there's a question for you guys while I'm doing this. Where's my... There it is. Scrolling back, where was I? How do you go with planes when there's different face structure? I guess I'm explaining that a little bit right now. Samuel, can we get a downloadable recording of the live session? If you're talking about this one's going to be on YouTube until next week. Cameron says, how many planes of the face are ideal to adding for the portrait? Is it better to add more for more depth, or is there a point where it's just gets too much? It's really a question of like personal preferences. I think, like in the case of what I'm doing right now, there's a lot of planes. I'm actually looking at the picture and I'm looking at all the different planes. And as you grow older, there's more little muscles that start to change the face, and all of these kind of things create new planes. So yeah, I think it's a question of personal preferences. If you're doing less planes, you'll look younger. You'll look a little bit more like a cartoon or stylized. If you do more planes, you might go towards more realistic or cartoonish if you're adding too much, if you play with the proportions. In my case, I think if you look at the portrait I have, usually I like to have, you see the Azaro head as a side that it's like less details and a side more details. Apparently it's because there's one that's young and one that's older. I think it's just there's one that's just less details, the other one has more details. So it's a question of preferences, really. But if you want a good portrait, I think size of the face, cheekbones, following the Riley kind of like form, like the mouth has kind of a roundness around the mouth, and you have the bridge of the nose, obviously, the contour of the eyes, the basic things, basically, right? It doesn't have to be more complicated, but this one is a little bit more. All right, let me continue just a little bit more here. Let me show you what I have so far. So let me just put all of this into a folder. We went from here and here. I think we can fill already a little bit more depth. Let's just try to continue. I'll add a new layer. Take my brush. I'm going to add that bounce light in the corner of the eye here, because that's important. And my values are not completely perfect, but I'm going to add that kind of light, that kind of light that comes from the background here. You can also see it a little bit here. You can definitely see it even a little bit here. So let's add that. I'll be playing with the edges later to soften it up at the right places. I feel like I can start working on the other side of the face. I'm just going to make sure to first have my eye, which kind of look kind of more like in the browner kind of tones, darkish tones. And there's like dark Unfortunately, when it comes to the rendering, like there's a lot of tricks that I can give, obviously, to get you started, and that's why I tried in a course as much as I could. But there's a lot of a learning curve that you need to fail. You need to fail a bunch of times. So my idea to you is do a lot and try to thrive for having your work flow like I'm going to teach you all week long, where you go from sketch to rendering to final details, and then you move on to the next. Don't get caught up into rendering over and over and trying to perfectly, like, you will get better by learning from your mistakes. So see what you're doing wrong, try to fix it a little bit, but don't dwell on it. Put the details on it and pass to the next portrait. You get better faster this way. Let's just add here. It's a question of value here. You know, so there's definitely like an eyelashes. It's a kind of very dark. There is that bright highlight there. Bit of a shadow here. Let me take some blacks to kind of bring back the darkness here. All of this is supposed to be kind of darker here. There's still some light that's supposed to come in the eye, so let's bring that back. There is more orange tone. As I'm going, I need to probably just kind of add some darker orange tone. So I'm going to try to add that on a new layer. Let's see, that's maybe too much, but let me see what's the color I have here. Let's go darker, more red. I think that's better. Let's add that. I can even see like just kind of a darker patch here of shadows. Here could be just a bit darker, I guess. But let's get back to those oranges. The nose, stay saturated. The nose, just the skin in general needs to be kind of just more orange. So let's just add some of it. So just that adds already a lot. New layer, I'm going to go back to my hard edge. And I'm not going to render everything, but I'm going to finish with a few things here. Just to show you that sometimes once you have like fixed enough, like the structure is back for me. So this is working. What I'm going to do is just kind of bring back some certain planes, like the one for the nostril here, which I'm going to go and try to almost just have like just that, like that here. There's kind of a bit of a bump here. I'll add my occlusion shadows for the nostril, which will bring me some more depth. I'll have the subsurface scattering around it, which is kind of just having like that more orange kind of tone. There's some more orange here. And then I can come and just kind of add these highlights a little bit here. I think I can go even more pale. And just had that. We have kind of a, you know, I love my tablet, but sometimes I'm too close to it. I need to get further away to be able to see what I'm doing. Little highlight here, little highlight. These highlights that I'm adding, they go on those planes, like the plane of the eye. There's a highlight right there. The corner of the eye, that's another like kind of plane. This here, it's a bit soft. I think I would just kind of add just a little bit more of a few brush stroke like that, so it's a little bit more solid. The eyebrow here is too dark. Let's put it more pale. Not everywhere, but for the most part, I think it's supposed to be more pale. And yeah, hopefully you guys understand what or see the value of making all these tiny changes. I'm going to soften up my values now. Whoops. to be careful. Computer is lagging slightly. That's good. I don't want to soften up too much, but just enough. And yeah, there's a lot I could add more, but I'm going to stop here. Let me show you what I have. So we went from this to this. And all I've been really doing is observing the values, observing my understanding of the planes of the face, so the arrowhead, what kind of planes that I wanted to bring back, like the nose, the cheekbones, these kind of things. And this is great observation work. If you want to go further than that and create something that's more stylized, you can take all of these things and change the proportion, make bigger eyes, bigger lips or smaller lips, change the proportion of the face. You can also just create more gradients, smooth certain details. That will come with practice and understanding of the basic principle that we've been talking in the class, really. But hopefully this was helpful. I could have continued, but I think I passed my point. Let me see if there is questions before I move on to the next one. And I want to say a big thank you to everybody that's here with me, guys. This is always a pleasure to be able to do these. Even though they're very late for me, I really like them. New Epic says, in the Academy, you teach how to make complete anatomy. We are continuing to build the anatomy course. We don't have everything right now. We have gesture. We have the anatomy of the face completely. What I would like to add this year is a little bit more mannequization. We don't have the muscles of the body. That's not something that I think I'll do either. I think I'll go towards teaching you guys how to understand the basic blocks of the human anatomy and understanding them with perspective, because knowing anatomy is one thing, it's definitely useful, but if you don't understand how to place basic form and perspective, you'll never be able to put a character into an environment from imagination, and that's really my goal in the Academy. So there's a lot of material, there's a lot of anatomy already, there's not enough for me. I want to add more. That's going to come this year for sure. Rashmeet says, whenever I smudge using soft brush, I always find my portrait blurry. Is there any way to avoid that practice? Should I less use colors for blending? It's a question of bringing back the edges, guys. So as you can see, I barely blended these edges that I just did, right? So when you see that you're losing the edges, paint them back with hard edges. You can have a very nice portrait with hard edges. That's going to look much better if your edges are placed at the right place where the shadow are supposed to be, basically. It's going to be always looking more like better than having something that's too soft. Sorry. So that's what I would concentrate on. Look at the edges of the arrowhead. Look at the edges of your portrait, and try to estimate which one should stay as solid as possible. Illuminacio says, do you determine color of the light and shadow first or work? First or work. I'm not sure what's the question here, but talking about just light, you want to think about the color of your key light. The key light is the light illuminating your subject. Like in this case, let me just create a new layer, and I'll just paint on this. So you have a key light here that illuminates, it's actually more on the side, I guess, so something like that illuminates this subject. And then you have here on the side of the face the bounce light, and that's a second light source. My taking is they probably use like a reflective kind of shiny material, like sometimes they use just foam, white foam, to bounce back some of the light on the face, which becomes kind of a bounce light, second light source of some sort. And this light usually will have the ambient light, or in this case, if they use like a colored reflective, it would have the color. So colors, bounce light, when it comes to bounce light, it would always take the color of whatever material that's bouncing from. So if you have a panel here that would be, I don't know, yellow, then you would have a yellow kind of light on the side of the face. In this case, what I'm thinking they did was just a white kind of reflective. Therefore, that white took a little bit of the light of the ambient light, and you have that kind of gray, almost whitish kind of bounce light on the face. So that's the two things. So just think about the lights, the color of the light that you want to put in there, or look at your environment and guess it. Like if you are in a scene outside, you would have two light sources. You would have the sun, that's your key light, and you have the sky, the blue sky, right? If you take out the sun, the shadows are always kind of in a blue tint when you think about it. And it's because there's light that comes from the sky that bounces on everything, but then the sun is so bright that it overpowers that light. What you really see in the shadow is not just the absence of the sunlight, it's also the light that comes from the sky, and that's why you have that tint blue. All these concepts I explained in much greater details in the DPA. GY says, I'm struggling with blending in Procreate using the mixer brush. Any tips? Yes, play with the setting of your brush, okay? So you want to use a brush tip and put it in Smudge Tool and just play with the settings. I'm not an expert when it comes to Procreate, but I know there's a ton of settings and the settings are really good. Just see what can work. Maybe your brush is too sensitive right now and so it moved too much. You can play with all the different settings and just kind of play with it. Once you have a good brush, by the way, I'm talking to anybody that's there, if you have a good brush in Procreate and you want to share it with the community, you have my go for it. Just share in the community. That'd be great. Rachel C says, is there a way to avoid that airbrush look in the skin after blurring the shapes? I feel like I always end up with a very smooth, almost rubbery look. You know what, Rachel, I think it's a great question, and with that question, I think I'm going to move on to our next portrait, which is the portrait of Inoa. And I'm going to talk about this one because I think it reflects exactly the question that you have. What Inoa did is she took, like, first of all, I like the shape here, the shape pattern. It's not exactly what was asked for in the course, but it still looked great. I think there's a lot of geometry in it, and I think it's fun. But if you're looking at the Azaro head, there's just a little bit of too much of different kind of shapes. We should have to simplify them, and I'll try to do that. And what she did, and then she blurred all these shapes, and she lost the structure. Again, I'll say this, the reference picture that she chose, or he chose, Inoa, is very soft. So we need to actually add structure to the reference that we're seeing. So I'm going to try to do this here. I'm going to create a new layer. Push that a little bit. I'm going to create a new layer and hard edge brush. And what I want to do is to bring back those hard edges, right? So when it becomes too soft, you want to bring back those hard edges. One thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to repaint the hair, because that hair is, there's too much contrast within these highlights. We'll come back to that afterwards. That's already better. There's a bit of like problem with like proportions here. You know what? Maybe I can actually kind of maybe go into, bear with me. Hopefully my computer is going to be able to do this. I might just do a selection so it doesn't freak out. Let's go into Liquify. Hopefully you can take it. Let's try to modify just a few things. I feel like, so one thing that's for sure, the eyes can be just bring back a little bit. The shape of the eyes itself, and not too far. But I feel like this could be just a little higher, I guess. This eyebrow could be a little lower. Let's push the forehead. Let's push that a little. I think the entire face is probably just kind of too big. Certainly the chin is very large here. Let's just push that a little bit. The mouth is very big here. Let's just kind of push that a little bit. I think that's better. It doesn't have to be perfect from there to there. Okay, let's rework on those shapes. So you want to look at your Azaro head. Once you have like that problem when everything is blurry, you want to bring back basically structure so people have places for the eyes to attach. And you can really decide where you want to go. For me, I'm going to use just like the different planes of the Azaro head. So for here, for example, I'm going to, looking at this, the values are also a little bit too like pale. Let's just add some more darkness a little bit. So I could add a bit more structure here. Under the lip here, there's some structure to be added here. That highlight shadow is just, it's too much. I might actually use a saffron brush here to just kind of repaint the light here. And then going back with a hard edge brush to define these hard edges that will ultimately bring structure to the face. Like this. There's the bottom eyelid that we can exaggerate. Let me zoom in so you guys see a little bit more. The bottom eyelid that we can exaggerate, that's one plane right there that's super important. That adds dimension to your eye. We see a little bit here. We can push that a little bit more. Having the right occlusion shadows will help for the values. I'm just going to add just a little bit more darkness. I know I said to not, or if I didn't say it yet, I'll say it in a detailed one. Do not add black, but sometimes the occlusion shadows are so dark that you need to add some black. I'm just going to repaint the eyes here so they get just darker. There is that cool highlights in them. I'm just going to take out that highlight for now, making that eyelash just a little thicker here, a little darker. It's important. We're trying to attract attention to the eyes. There's a bit of blue in there. I don't know if you guys see that. I'm kind of going a little bit everywhere, but there's a bit of blue here. Let's add that little touch of blue. It's going to add to the portrait a lot. Let's get back to our shapes. So here, I added like a very hard shape. Obviously, this is not necessarily the right shape. She has very like rounded cheekbones, so I can kind of try to round that up, but I'm trying to do it with hard shapes. And once you'll find that hard shape that fits your portrait, I think I'm seeing a lot of saturated, like kind of yellow here. We can add some more of that color here. Once you find a shape that you feel like, okay, like it's, even though it's a hard shape, it looks like it's fitting her, you'll be able to, after that, kind of soften it up. And it's a process that requires a lot of observation and ultimately trust in the process. Because you'll doubt what you're doing. Like the patch that I have doing here, I'm building it as I go, but it doesn't look great yet. I'm just trying to see if this is going to work. I'm going to push that plane here with a hard edge as well. I'm going to darken the lips a little bit. Over here, I'm going to pick up these edges here as well. I'm building back the edges with hard edges. That's what I'm doing right now. just trying to construct. Because even though we're rendering and we're rendering with at the end like softer planes, if you're losing the structure that's behind those softer plane, that's where your portrait just go AWOL and start not looking good. So let's push these planes a little bit more. See what I have from here for here. Well, there's a huge difference. Obviously, I should have made a copy of my first one. Actually, I might be able to do that again. Let me just come here and do filter, liquify. Is it going to, oh shit, no. Can I redo that? Yeah, maybe that's gonna work. Filter, liquify. Yep, nice. So now we can go and see the planes that I'm adding, right? So I'm repainting some value, and I'm repainting some values and thinking about the edges, really. Like that corner here, we have a, whoops, wrong layer. We have some darker patches here and planes. That comes here. Let's bring back these occlusion shadows a little bit. Right, to help us. I'm going to build that plane, all a hard shape right here. I'm going to take this, put it darker, and I feel like there is a little shape here in the corner of the eye, and it's covered by that, so let's put this, I'm seeing that. And obviously, like each of these, they're pushing a little bit further than the Azaro head, obviously, but it's part, the basic of the Azaro head, part your own observation skills, which will grow with time. I feel like that highlight should be just more gray. So actually, let me just kind of repaint that for now. Maybe repaint that for now. And then go towards the gray. And maybe more pale grays. I'm just going to add a patch for now. Kind of another patch here, and then try to build towards that a little bit. The eyebrow is not supposed to be as dark. Let's repaint a little bit on it. Same thing here, just a bit. I feel like a bit more of a curve here. I'm going to push it a little bit more, and then I'll soften up the things. And obviously, hopefully this is going to make more sense when I start softening up. Because right now it might just be a little bit too confusing. I don't want to go too bright with the highlights just yet. Oh, it's too bright. Let's see if I can just push it a little bit more. There's this. There's a very bright highlight on the lip. I'm going to put it. It's going to help a little bit. There's a patch here as well. All right, you know what? Let me soften up. So I have all these hard edges, right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm reconstructing with hard edges. And now I can take the soft round, the smudge tool. And what I want to do is just soften it up. Just enough. And it's really the edge. Sometimes you'll see still like a little bit here, you still see like the edge, but you soften up just a little bit so that it's not a pure hard edge. Same thing here. Soften it up. Sometimes you just want to keep that edge. This value here kind of needs to be like a little bit darker, a little bit everywhere here, and then bring that just a bit more. And zooming in, zooming out, seeing if we are bringing back the right. I'm not gonna lie, this is a very hard portrait, and if I had to do this one, I would have to probably restart from the beginning. I just feel like this, the roundness of the cheek makes it very difficult to, where's my brush? To have the structure and to have the softness at the same time, if that makes sense. So I don't blame anybody that choose this one. It is hard. But hopefully you are seeing where I'm going. There's also like a lot of values, shifts that are very subtle here. Where we went from here to here. And it's getting better. It's getting better. All right, let's see if they have more questions, and I'll continue a little bit more. Chris says, can you discuss eyes? No matter what I do, my eyes look lifeless to me. I'll talk about eyes a little bit more on Saturday. We'll talk about details. Before you see the details, I prefer to not talk about eyes. Just scrolling down. If you guys have more questions, you can put a capital Q in front of it. This is going to help me a lot. But for now, I'm not seeing more questions, so let's keep pushing. I'm just going to render a little bit more these patchy places of gray, trying to not lose too much of these. And it's also a question of being precise, right? So sometimes, like for here, for example, let me just see, like, see that there's like a edge here. Whoops, am I on top of the right picture? No, that's why. Let's put that here. You have an edge here. Well, you probably want to have the same edge here. And it's going to help you to kind of build these crisp changes in planes. Yeah. Let me know in the chat if all of this makes sense. I feel like my shadows, my highlight, am I having a hard, I don't know. Let's get back the hard branch. My shadow are just a bit too gray. I could definitely push them a little bit more. And push them like this. Same thing here, same thing there. Scanning everywhere. I feel like the chin can also huge. Like, and that's what I mean by try to not spend too much time on rendering. Try to just see things and put like, all right, so there's a patch here of light. I'm trying to do like, all right, there's a line here that I'm seeing of kind of a orange tone that go from the eye. Let's put just that line there and see how it looks, you know? I'm like, all right, so that gives me a little bit more structure. So now I can kind of, it gives me the structure to be able to be like, all right, so I know there's a highlights here and there's another highlight there. And even though the contrast is too bright now, I can kind of modify the contrast a little bit. And then I can do the same thing with like the nose. There's that bit of orange here. And then under that bit of orange, there is that shadow that continue here. And so on and so forth. The teeth are too bright. I'm gonna just repaint over them. I almost feel like they have blue in them, so I might try to add blue to them a little bit. And maybe trying to do that. That's kind of good. And yeah, let's soften up everything that I just added here. So I can soften up this, soften up that, soften up all these different parts. Yeah. All right. Let me see. Let me see. I don't see more questions, guys. Let me know if you have more question. I'm probably going to stop in a few minutes. Thank you so much for everybody that was with me the entire time. I kind of lost myself into to rendering here. On tomorrow, when we're going to have the third phase, we will talk about details, and in there, I'll have a lot more tips about eyes, hair, just details in general, how to make your facial features a little bit better, all of that great stuff. So yeah, let me see. So hopefully that makes more sense. So we went from this to this, but there was a lot of changes for the proportions, but I think it's a little bit better. As you can see, this is a very soft one. The softness of the shadow, the softness of the face, the softness of the feature makes it always harder because these edges are harder to find. So if you are a beginner to newbie, find something or someone with a lot of hard edges. Men are better to draw when you are a beginner because the face of a man usually has hard edges. Let me just see if there's more question. No more question. All right, guys. Thank you so much for everybody that was there with me. It was a pleasure. Let me just put my face in big so you guys can see me. I hope this session was helpful. If you have more question, the tribe is there for you guys. Post your work in there. It helps everyone with their momentum and everything. And yeah, quick reminder. Let me show you guys that again. Quick reminder that on Sunday, I'm going to have this workshop. I've been working on it all week long. It's going to be a workshop that's going to be a little bit different than the course that you've been following all week long. We will talk about tips on how to make these small 5-minute exercises, how to make sure that they teach you core concepts while having fun. I think, like we were talking earlier, like making boxes, it's not always interesting to learn perspective, but once you put your understanding of perspective on actual exercises that you like to draw, that's where you're going to start seeing progress. So I'm going to give you tips on that direction. I'm going to give you tips on how to build your schedule, how to grow your momentum and all of this. I'm also going to talk about the brand new digital painting 3.0. We've been working on this all year long and we're going to about to release it. We're going to open the doors because right now you cannot join, if you guys realize that. We close the door, we're going to open them, and then we're going to close them real soon after that. We are going to basically follow a kind of open-close system where we are going to bring some new people in and concentrate with them to really give them the progress that they need. More of this on Sunday, so looking forward to see all of you guys there. On Sunday, there is a link in the description of this video. Let me get back here. On the description, so you just have to click on it if you want a reminder. I'm looking forward to see you there, guys. For the rest, have a good day wherever you are in the world. For me, it's 11. I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you guys on Saturday. I'm super excited to see the details on your portrait. Happy painting, guys, and enjoy.